Do you get confused by the range of options that exist in the modern Italian? And do you wonder what exactly is the best plan to play in each given situation? Well, in this video, I'd like to show you a great game I just saw between Dmitry Jakovenko against another top Russian Grandmaster, Peter Svidler, who's also written some really great video series and ebooks in recent times on some of his pet openings. So I'll take you through the opening moves of this game, where it was indeed the Italian game. It's funny actually, because when we're beginners, nearly all of us start playing the Italian game. We love to attack that f7 pawn really quickly. I mean, who doesn't, get a little bit excited when they hear of the fried liver. But then actually, as we become strong players, as we become a grandmaster, we find, well, maybe that old love of the Italian can come back. And the great thing about the Italian is there are just so many different ways to play it. Where after bishop c5, granted most of the world's top players will play it in this very positional setup, the modern Italian with d3. But if you want to play a hack attack, by all means play the Evans Gambit if you want. But in this video I'm going to show you this full game, because I was really impressed by the way Jakovenko played. And all of the modern generation forget about Jakovenko, but many years ago he was actually, I believe, in the top 10 in the world, if I'm not mistaken. So obviously a very classy player. I remember also clobbered my Caro-Kann earlier this year in Internet Chess Club Blitz, but that's a story for another time. So after d3, knight f6 and castles, let me ask you a question. Why do you think we might delay the move c2, c3 in this position? Give you a moment to think about it. Okay, let's say for argument's sake that black castles here. In this position you may find you have a more useful move than c3, because when you play c3 they have the option of pushing d5 in one go. And long term black does have a bit of extra space in the centre. Granted, there's a lot more that can be said about this. For example, a4 is one weird move that has been quite popular at the top level that you may like to investigate yourself. But that's sort of black's idea, that if we don't have that c3 square for the knight, d5 does gain a bit in strength. With that in mind, what do you think might be a good move for white to try and anticipate that d5 move? Alright, there are a few decent options, but one that might appeal to you is to play the move rook to e1, so that if they were to play d5, well, you can simply take. And they do have the by no means small issue that the e-pawn is, could perhaps even be taken in the near future. And you see that in different versions actually, where even when white plays moves like h3 and even a4 are some of the more unusual attempts we've seen lately. But even after these moves you can say d5 is not as effective as when we've played c3. I could talk a lot more about this, but I've covered a lot of the key ideas in the recent article I did for 50 Moves magazine. It's a great magazine, by the way. You should definitely subscribe. It's by my friend Grandmaster Moulton Lee. Anyway, let's see how this game played out. This might serve as a nice update for those of you who do like and learn from my articles in 50 Moves magazine on the openings. So after d6, c3. Alright, so who here knows what move black normally plays here to try and get out of the way of attacks on the bishop? So I'll give you a moment to think of it. Okay, well, a6 is actually the most common move, and the idea is that we can often tuck that bishop away on a7, because, well, it'll take a while to explain it, but let's just say, if white would have played a normal Roy Lopez moves, such as knight bd2, and let's say they play, I don't know, h3 in this position, well, in that case you'd actually might run into some ideas with knight to a5. Maybe if knight a5 immediately, I'm not sure about the timing here. But after, say, castles and rook e1, for example, well, then knight a5 is the sort of move we want to avoid, where we may. Remember the rule of thumb in the Roy Lopez. I want you to pay close attention. Write this down if you can. That if we lose our light squared bishop for a knight, we can't really hope for an advantage in the Italian game or in the Roy Lopez. they go bishop e6, well, it's another story altogether. Which again could be the subject of another video, what to do about the Mexican standoff between the bishops. But in the meantime, let's see the move that Peter Svidler played as black. He played this move a5. Now, to most people, you'll probably be thinking, well, what is this a5 move? What's the point of this compared to a6? But because I actually checked the computer and its evaluations, I knew why Svidler played this. Can you tell me why? Well, it is true he is stopping b4, but it's also the first choice of the engine. And that's one tip I can give. If you want to know what your future opponent's going to play, just look at what the engine's first line is. Most chess players are lazy and they're going to follow the engine's first line. Or actually, even more common, they won't even know what the line is and they'll make something up at the board. Hey, it's worked for me before. I'm not going to diss it too much. But okay, after a5, white played rook e1. I think it's a very sensible move, really, just to say, I'm just going to play my normal sort of Roy Lopez and, let you see what you come up with. So, black played the move h6. I'm not sure if there's anything particularly wrong with castles, to be honest. But maybe Svidler was slightly concerned he might get hit with a d4 move before we've played knight d2. I mean, I haven't studied this variation, I don't know for sure. But that's my feeling, he maybe wanted to avoid some lines of accelerated d4. Because, there isn't bishop g4 or anything to, in reply to at d4 later on. So, after h6, in this position, knight bd2 is, I think, quite an accurate move. Who can tell me what the thematic reply is if white were to play h6, h3 in this position? So, most of you might be saying, well, let's castle kingside and have a normal position. But I want to show you a really cool idea that I think you'll like a lot. After bishop a7, let's say they play a happy move, knight bd2. And this is an idea that even the computers won't tell you right away. When they play h3, you can often hit them with g5 and try to open that g file with g4. Granted, it's probably better with the pawn on a6, because here they might be able to go bishop b5 and try and push in the center. But even so, I reckon I would be willing to give this a punt in blitz after g4. It takes and knight takes. I mean, you've got an attack down the g file. Certainly black is not without his chances in this sort of position. And even already the computer is starting to come to the good side and realize that white's attack is actually pretty scary. So yeah, that's a free novelty for you right there. So the rule of thumb is don't play h3 until they've castled. Because once they've castled, you don't have to worry about the g5, g4 attack, hack attack. So keep that in mind and you might be able to get an IM or GM scalp in your next tournament. So after knight b to d2, we had castles. And white played the move knight f1. I think it's not a bad decision at all, just saying, well, maybe we don't have to play bishop b3 now that knight a5 is not an option. And maybe we don't have to play h3 either, because I mean, if they go knight g4, well, big deal. We'll just push d4 and ask them what exactly they gained from bringing their knight to g4. So knight g4, this sort of forcing play, it's rare that really works in this opening. It's definitely much more about finding the correct long-term plan for our pieces. So after bishop e6, okay, maybe I will get to tell you all about the great Mexican standoff between the Italian bishop and the black bishop. So, when I have the pawn on a6, well then it can be a different story, where you might then, I can't really edit the position easily, but if that pawn is on a6, you might take and, push your queenside pawns up, and get a nice initiative on the queenside. I can highly recommend the game Castle against Buckrow as a model example of how to play that sort of position as white. And there's other good games as well. I think Kayakin also had a nice game against Buckrow, if I'm not mistaken, with this idea. But okay, you don't have b4, so I think that taking on e6 is going to lose a little bit of its sting. They have ideas where, okay, let's say for argument's sake we play a4 here. What do you think would be a good plan for black now in this position? I'm going to be nice today and flip the board to give you a chance to come up with a good plan. So, in fairness, actually quite a few good options for black. But if I was in black shoes, I think I would either play queen e8 and maybe try and get my knight to f4 that way. Or maybe we could even be a bit more efficient and perhaps play knight h5 right away. Once again, I'm going to say, the computers are wrong and I am right. Because, hey, I'm a grandmaster and the computers aren't. But okay, these jokes aside, the point is that we do have knight f4 as an idea. If they play bishop e3, we can take, and I mean, this structure feels pretty close to equal. It's very symmetrical, and and I can always hop back to f6 to make sure that things are nice and solid. Also make sure that, d4 is not going to be that much of a problem here as such. If they do play some other move, let's say they play d4, because you might be wondering, well, what if they just hit us in the center? I find we usually don't have to worry about that, though. And the reason is, well, okay, what's the square that white has weakened with this c takes d4 capture? Very good, team. We have the move bishop to b4, okay, tempo on the rook. And honestly, I think black might actually be better already. Because we've got queen f6 and the knight comes to f4. I mean, you can ask the question, what exactly is white's plan here? I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. So, anyway, as it happens, I'm not a big fan of bishop e6. I think the way that Jakovenko played it was much better. I really like his bishop b5 move. We got to play the Royal Lepez in the end, in a way. And, it is a Royal Lepez where black got in this extra move of a5. But, that pawns can't move backwards. He can't go a6 and kick that bishop back again. So, in this position, Svidler played... excuse me. Svidler played knight to e7 here. And it's a kind of multi-purpose move. Your knight can swing over and you can support the e5 pawn like that. But you can also go c6 and kind of kick the bishop away. So it's a very thematic move by Svidler. If you've been a good student of Lev Aronian's e4, e5 games, then such moves will be second nature to you. In fairness, it's also not so bad to go bishop b6. It's often a great to tuck that bishop away just to make sure that d4 is not coming with a tempo. Obviously, we might even be losing a piece if to d4, d5 forks if we're not careful. Just to show you how that plays out, just so there's no confusion. If they were to play, let's say, I don't know, queen to b8, then yeah, we go d4 and, we have the idea that against certain bishop moves, d5 is going to fork the two pieces. So that's the sort of thing you have to be careful of, because I see many junior players fall into this sort of trick, when I play my simuls, for example. So yeah, queen b8 doesn't make that much sense. It's just a dummy move to show white's idea. So we had knight e7. And okay, what's the break that we're just dreaming to play, that we would just absolutely love to play in the modern Italian? Give you a moment to think about it. Yeah, why not attack their bishop? You have to move d4. And already you can see that black is not really able to keep his center all that easily. If he goes, he takes d4. We take him back, having the dream center. And after bishop to b6. Okay, they can try to attack our center, but I think we're covering it pretty well. We've got that grip on d4 and e4. And okay, I'd personally say white is probably a little bit better in this position. As a bit of an extension exercise for the professionals wanting to learn how to beat Peter Svidler and his e4, e5 system, you may like to investigate d5, e5 and knight e4 more deeply. I think there's some very interesting play from this point. But for us lesser mortals, I think it'll be enough to say, our centre looks good. Let's just, relish it. So, or cherish it, I should say. So after d4, bishop a7 was played. And, you could make a case for just saying, well, I'll just put my knight on the Spanish square. My bishop can tuck away Vladimir Kramnik style. That one can go to e3. And I'll just say, well, I have more space and therefore I'm a bit better. I mean, e4, e5 is solid. We'll happily take our plus 0.2 or plus 0.25 edge any day of the week. So it's better than bang our head against the Berlin endgame, right? So, Well, I didn't play knight g3, but that's definitely a case that can be made for this move. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see some more strong players playing it in the subsequent games. But in the game, white decided to release attention, going for d takes e5. Now, I have a question for you. If black does play d takes e5, and let's just say we take on d8, just make life easy. In this position here, what do you think about taking on e5? Do you think it's a good move here? Well, you shouldn't be afraid of ghosts. It is indeed safe to take e5. And okay, black is not without his compensation. According to the computer, you get some comp going a4 and saying that the bishop doesn't have a great square after bishop b5. I should also explain bishop a4 is not just a free pawn. Can you tell me why? Very good, folks. You have bishop f2. And already after rook takes a4, we're hitting their pawn on a2 and the pawn on e4. So that's nothing special for white. Okay, you don't have to take their pawn, of course. But, our bishop will get forced back, and black does have a bit of a lead in development. So, I mean, black is not without his compensation here. But that said, I do prefer the move Svidler played, because with knight g4, well, you just don't go down a pawn for starters, because of the little fork we have here. So I play bishop to e3. If you take e3, it is going to be a pawn sack. So Svidler did the normal thing. Knight takes e5. White played bishop takes a7. I mean, you could make a case for knight takes e5 as well, and say that black is, this rook is a little bit offside in this position. I'm not sure it counts for much, though. I mean, black can put his pieces on very solid squares. The rook can re-enter the play. And I don't really see any problems for black. So I understand why Jakovenko wanted to take, because the reason is that he wants to keep his space advantage in the center, because that's the main advantage that white has in this type of position, the extra space on a board, importantly full of minor pieces. Those of you that have read Boris Gelfand's excellent books of quality chess will know very well about this principle, that when we have a space advantage, we particularly want to keep the minor pieces on the board. So with that in mind, what do you think Jakovenko played in this position? Okay, so we want to avoid the trade of the knights, as I mentioned before. So we played knight d4, and with this Jakovenko keeps the pieces on the board. He also has to watch out for f4, giving the boot to the e5 knight. I should probably mention that maybe black could have considered taking on f3 first, just to make sure that, that you get in that trade of minor pieces. I do think white is still better, because, I mean, you've got more space, and you do have certain pawn breaks you can entertain in the future. But, I mean, black is solid too. It's definitely a position that he can play. You can bring your queen out and find some square for your knight at least. And the game goes on. So after rook takes, knight takes. So, yeah, I don't want this to be a 1 hour video. So let's continue on with the game. I don't really like the computer's c5. It just feels a bit too weakening to me. So we had knight 7 g6. Seems like a good move. And okay, knight e3 is, I think, very precise. Just making sure that, excuse me, just making sure that d5 and f5 are not really going to hurt us anytime soon. Because if they get that in, that kind of gets rid of our space advantage, if you think about it. So after bishop d7, alright, another puzzle for you guys. Who do you think benefits from the exchange of the light squared bishops? Feel free to think about it a bit more, or pause the video as you need. Well, actually, I think white benefits from keeping the bishops on the board. I should word that better. Black benefits from the exchange of the light squared bishops, because he has less space. So Jakovenko did the correct Russian principle, keep the pieces on. And a4, I mean, a4 can be a bit of a weakness, but there is a question, what else do you do? Black is a little bit passive. Can you tell me why exactly black's in trouble, other than the fact that he has less space? It's a bit of a lateral question, but Just think about it for a moment. So the reason is that basically, if you don't have a pawn break in a position, it often means you just don't have a really good plan. Granted, if it's an open position, if these pawns are traded, let's say, then okay, maybe you don't need a pawn break because you have a completely open file or two for your rook. But when you don't have a completely open file, you really need to find a way to open a position at some moment. Because if you don't, the trend will just keep going against you and your position will just get worse and worse until you sort of get squashed. I think that this game is actually a case in point for that principle. So, okay, how do we apply... Excuse me. How do we apply distance 4 to the black knight in this position? I mean the black knight on g6, just to be clear. So, hats off if you found the move g3. Now, this is a true grandmaster move here, because in one swoop we just kill that knight. We're ready to fianchetto our bishop as we need to. And we're ready to kick the other knight with f4. And that's the thing with positional chess, that good moves often don't just have one idea. They might have 2 or 3 ideas that can further our own agenda, while stopping the opponent's most desired option. So black played knight e7. I mean, if he's playing knight 7 g6 and he's already going back to e7, you know something's not gone right for something has gone very wrong for black here. So after f4, knight 5 c6, knight b5, and okay, rook a5 is an attempted rook lift. I'm sorry to say though, your rook is not going to be able to jump over that knight. And well, c4 is just a good consolidating move, right? Just to make sure that knight is not going anywhere. You could also play queen d2 if you want, but why play it in the game anyway? Now, I do want to get through the game before all the caffeine in my system wears out, so let's get to the action. We had rook to a8, rook a to d1. If you want to fianchetto your bishop, I mean, that also looks like a pretty good move. I mean, while we're here, I guess we should point out that black is only a few moves away from actually, setting up his pieces for chess 960. If you don't believe me, let me show you this. Bishop c8, king to h8, and let's say play a random move. And they go knight g8, then, look at this. They're already set up for chess 960, ready for the next game. So we can sort of see, all jokes aside, that black's pieces are really very passive. And, from about 10 moves ago, his position hasn't really got any better. Already a lot of his pieces have sort of had to retreat as such from where they were. It's not good news for him. So even a stronger player as Svidler actually was not able to survive here. So let me show you how Jakovenko put it away. After rook e8. So he was a good, I shouldn't say Russian schoolboy, but a good Russian student. Saying, well, black doesn't have a good move anyway, so I'm just going to sit here and ask you, okay, make a move. Try and come up with a useful one. Now, the cold-blooded computer is already saying, let's not waste time. Let's play c5 and make it to the grand final football game. Well, if black were to play d takes c5. Alright, what's the reason we played c5 other than to open the d file? Gave you a little hint there. So, how can we use that pin? So, hats off if you found bishop to f3. They can't really defend that bishop anymore. We have got the rather nasty pin on to take the queen if they take either of our minor pieces. And if they play c6, then yeah, you can just take them. And this is going to be a little bit of a buffet after knight takes d7 and then boom, knight d6. And this is just an absolute calamity for black. Rook f8. We can do yum-yums and once the queen moves to safety from the attack on the knight, we will take d7 and yeah, that's all she wrote. So if white had played this, then we could have ended the video now. But I think you'll like the way Jakovenko played the ending. So let's just fast forward a little bit. So yeah, e5 is the other typical break when you have that kind of c4, e4 space advantage. Eventually you want to attack that d6 pawn with a pawn and just bring all of your active pieces straight into the action. I mean, look at how many pieces we improve the position of and improve the activity of just with that one pawn move. I mean, it's not for nothing that Fyodor said pawns are the soul of chess. So Svidler desperately tried to defend his his d6 pawn with knight c8. And the cold-blooded computers are saying, no, let's just attack you one more time. Knight f5 and... okay, what are you going to do now? If I was playing black, I think I would take, and I'd probably go queen d7. Just trying to, kick this knight out of my position any way I can. But the problem is, I think black's not even really threatening to take it. Just let me show you how that works after queen c3. So let's say they take it, because, I mean, what else are you going to do? Then there's knight c7, and, we can already see that those rooks are under a fork. Black is going to be losing a full rook. And, yeah, white is up in exchange and a pawn. And, yeah, life is good. We're going to win this as white. Hopefully even with our eyes closed. So after knight c8, maybe the player's already in time pressure at this point. Who knows? But after e d6, while this is not probably the best way to win, I think it is going to be good enough. After knight d6, queen d6. And after takes, if you want to keep it simple, and you know how much I love to keep it simple, being a hardened blitz player, you can just take a pawn and say, well, I'm a pawn up. I'm going to push my queenside pawns, create a pass pawn, and, just win the game. Just like that. Of course, yeah, we have to still be a bit accurate. But in principle, it's a good plan. When you're up a pawn, use your majority to create a pass pawn, make a queen, and, mate their king. So, in the game, white played knight f5. Also a pretty good move, if you ask me. After rook takes, yeah, Svidler thought, well, I'm going to at least get in a rook lift before I end up getting ground down. And to be fair, it's a nice move. Knight d6 does run into bishop g2, and suddenly, that's not totally clear anymore with the attack on the knight as such. So, white played rook to d1, just keeping control. And I mean, that's a good way often to think about the ending. If you don't know what plan you should go for, just look for where their pawn weaknesses are and find a way to attack them and tie them down, hand and foot. So after rook b6, alright, in this position, who do you think benefits from the exchange of these pawns in this position? Feel free to think about it. It is a critical position. Well, full credit to you if you played rook to d2 here, because that pawn is dropping off like ripe fruit anyway. We're going to collect the harvest with knight takes d6. And if you play rook d6, there are some tricks. You might be thinking, well, I'll go rook d8 and chomp on the knight. The problem is that they are also threatening to take our bishop. And if we do take them, then like magic, they can take our bishop and also defend their knight, which, well, now it's actually black who is winning. So it shows how quickly a game can turn on its head if we just lose our concentration for one moment and, let the opponent play some trick on us. So that's a key. You should focus on just finding a good move every move. The game's not over until they resign. So Jakovenko played rook d2. Knight came to a6 because, okay, you should at least get your pieces developed, right? So we had knight d6, knight c5. Hey, computers want to show off and play bishop d5, saying, yeah, I like playing collinear moves because I'm a boss. But Jakovenko kept it simple. I like his knight to c8 move a lot. I mean, who doesn't love this sort of fork coming up with knight to e7? So black played rook to b4. I'm looking for some counterplay. But as I like to say, why defend against their threat when we have a stronger threat of our own? So knight c7. Knight e7 was played. King f6. Bishop c6 is a nice move. And after king e7, I think the best move is probably bishop d5, just to kind of anchor the bishop and try to attack their pawns as such. As I said, you fix to their pawn weaknesses, they stay a lot more passive, and it's easier to defeat destroy a still target than a moving target, after all. But okay, bishop b5. I don't like it quite as much, because the bishop does like mobility a little bit, but it's not such a bad move either. I mean, it's kind of hard for him to move his knight, because he has to watch out for rook d7 all the time, at least. Probably the best chance for Svidler is that when you've got the knight against the bishop, you want to try and fix the structure as much as you can to make their bishop less powerful. So I think trying to get that knight to e4 or to try and create some counterplay was the best chance Svidler had to save the game. Maybe it's not enough, but I mean, it's better than getting just ground down without a fight. On that basis, Svidler was trying to go a3 and try to get some counterplay that way. Now, if we get careless as white, b3 looks like it keeps control and traps the rook. But you've got to always be on the lookout for tricks for the opponent, especially when you're in a good position, because that's when you're going to be looking most of all. And knight b3 is actually a bit of a pest here, because after takes, you suddenly have the question of what to do about this charging advance of the a-pawn. And if you play, let's say, rook a2 to try and stop it, well, you're actually going to lose after rook to b2, and, you know, unfortunately, this is not Shatranj where your bishop is an elephant, I believe, that can jump over pawns and only moves 2 squares as such, diagonally. So yeah, be careful not to play b3. You know, Svidler is a very tricky player, as all the world's top players are. But after ba3, you know, simply taking the pawn is good. After rook b1, I mean, in this position, if we just take it after a4 and b6, what do you think is sort of black hoping for? Then what do you think is his main sort of hope to save a draw here? I can flip the board around just so you can see it in black shoes as well. So basically, black is trying to set up a blockade, saying, well, I'm blockading the dark squares, your light squared bishop is a ghost, my pieces are active, and I'm going to hold a draw. But of course, white gets to say as well. And we can actually undermine that blockade here with this very lovely move by Jakovenko. I really like his move a5 because it just gets rid of that doubled pawn and allows us to have a passed c-pawn. So at the moment, the knight's blockading the pawn. So what do you suggest we do about that? Well done, rook d5, attacking the knight. If they play rook c2, well, speak of which, he did play rook to c2 here. But probably knight e6 is the best try, where, in fairness, I'm not sure if Jakovenko had to play a5 so early. You know, maybe he could have improved his position a bit first. Maybe you try to put your king onto a more active square on the king's side. Maybe get your rook in and maybe only then play a5. You know, you might remember the saying of the great old Russian masters, do not hurry. If you've read Sherevsky's Endgame book, then of course this will be second nature to you. But that'll save you, you know, a little bit of reading. So, after rook d5, after a long fight, the players getting the time control, ultimately Svidler wasn't able to continue defending in the best way. Rook c2, to be fair, does look very tempting, because you are forking those 2 pawns. The problem is that it also gets white's king a lot more active. And after knight e6, well, white was just able to play very much with the initiative. Kind of what's more important than the material balance is sort of finding a way to get that c-pawn moving. Because if this comes to a race, the bishop will almost always beat the knight in a race situation. So, white played the move f5, continuing his initiative. I guess you probably saw the tactic knight c7 and rook to d7, a rather pestilent counterfork. In the game, black tried to get active with knight to g5. The best chance is probably to try and get your knight around. Well, okay, you can't even do that with the bishop and rook covering. So in fairness, white probably is winning by pushing the pawn. But okay, you have to try something as black. So Svidler tried to mix it up with knight g5, which is not such a bad practical try. And after king e3, I think our king's in just such a good position to support that c-pawn that, you know, it's going to be hard for black to hang on here. And after rook takes a2, I'll show you the final moves. It was c5. We don't have to kick their knight away because, let's face it, they probably want to reroute their knight like this anyway. So why make them play a move that they want to in any instance? So we had rook to a3. The king is a fighting piece, right? King to d4 was played. Rook to a1. c6. As I say, passed pawns must be pushed. And also gives our king an opening to support that passed pawn. And as, you know, Mark Feretsky would like to say, the king is perfectly, cut off in this position. That black king is not getting anywhere near our pawn. So after rook d1, king c4 was played. If you want to play bishop d3, okay, it's probably also good enough to win. Because we can throw in a check or something if they play rook c1 and just get our pawn rolling. Okay, Jakovenko played king c4. He realized that if you do take on d5, well, you're threatening c7 already because you're covering d7. King d8, then yeah, you can even go for h4, and I mean, if knight h7, let's say, then already you can't stop the pawn queening, and it would be time for black to lay down his arms. And so we had rook to c1, king to b3, so the checks are coming to an end. Black in desperation tried knight to e4. I mean, you can win a piece with this if you want to. I don't see anything particularly wrong with that. Or actually, there might be a little trick that Svidler was banking on. Because it just dawned on me maybe he's going to go rook b1. Yeah, it's very sneaky actually, that if king a4 he can go for this perpetual check. And if king c4, well, you might even be running the risk of losing after rook b4. So yeah, you've got to be careful and not fall asleep just before the game ends. So the key is just don't get too greedy right away. Check for the traps. And with king b2, yeah, now rook e5 is a bit more of a threat, which, limits black's options. I mean, if they go rook e1, they have a problem from a different angle. Where we have c7 and, we can just, destroy all the blockaders and just win with c8 equals queen one of these days. So black tried rook to b1, hoping to kind of confuse white here into maybe, allowing some knight fork on c3, which is not what the doctor ordered. But with the accurate king c2, black just resigned here. Because, I mean, I don't know how you're going to stop c7, c8 in this position. Where the computer's saying you have to take d5, but the extra exchange is easily enough to win in that case. So, yeah, that was the game here. I hope you enjoyed it a lot. Yeah, it was definitely very exciting to be able to, show the thought process of some very strong players and to explain their ideas. And I know I learned quite a lot from this game, just going through it now. So let's recap some of the key points. We saw how sometimes we can put our bishop on b5 and kind of transpose into a good Roy Lopez. We saw how when we have a space advantage, we want to keep the minor pieces on the board. So you might remember white kept them on with knight d4 and tucked the bishop away later when there was an exchange offered. Just this position to refresh your memory. And then I really liked Jakovenko's technique where, sure, he could have played c5 and dismantled the d6 pawn that way, but he got there in the end with e5, and maybe his endgame technique wasn't perfect, but it was certainly good enough to win the game. We could perhaps point to this moment where, perhaps rather than hurrying with a5, if the opponent doesn't have a clear attacking idea, maybe you can improve your position first and only then make your big push. So you're really in the strongest position possible when you do play your attacking idea, or in this case the a5 sort of breakthrough. So yeah, that was that game. Thank you very much for watching. Please feel free to share your thoughts on this video. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Have a good evening. Bye bye.